Data analysis and data-driven decision-making, the secret weapon of successful people. In the era of information explosion, every decision, big or small, is surrounded by an overwhelming amount of data. Successful individuals do not rely solely on intuition or personal experience. They know how to transform data into knowledge and knowledge into the right actions. The ability to analyze data and make data-driven decisions is no longer the privilege of data scientists. It has become an essential skill for anyone who aspires to advance in their career and business. Data analysis and data-driven decision-making, the dividing line between leaders and the ELDD. Have you ever wondered why, given the same opportunity, some people seize it and rise while others hesitate and let it slip away? The difference often doesn't lie in how much they know, but in how they read, interpret, and make decisions from data. In a world overflowing with information, those who cannot analyze data are like walking in the dark. They will always be guided by others' decisions, exposed to unnecessary risks from ignorance, and slowly lose control over their own lives. Let's face the truth. If you are still making decisions based on feelings, guesswork, or hearsay, you are putting yourself at a disadvantage. Successful people understand that data is the most honest advisor. It doesn't sugarcoat, it doesn't hide, it simply reveals the facts. And it is those facts that form the foundation for sharp decisions, fewer mistakes, and maximized opportunities. Data analysis skills are not exclusive to tech experts or data scientists. Whether you are an office worker, a small business owner, or a senior executive, knowing how to extract meaning from numbers and turn it into action will determine whether you are a leader or a follower. Think about it. If you could read sales figures to forecast trends, analyze financial reports to invest wisely, or spot market signals to adjust your strategy before it's too late, would you still have to depend on someone else? Don't let your self-respect be diminished by the fact that others succeed not because they are luckier, but because they see what you overlook. The difference between a decision based on data and one based on emotion can often be the gap between remarkable success and bitter failure. If you truly want to take charge of your destiny, start learning to analyze data today. Let data be the light that guides you, not the wave that drowns you. And if what I've shared has helped you realize the value of making data-driven decisions, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the lessons, strategies, and skills that can take you further each day. Sometimes, a single wise decision today can change your entire future. Understanding data, like understanding yourself, the first step to making the right decisions. When people hear about data analysis, many immediately picture massive spreadsheets, complicated numbers, or complex algorithms. This often makes them feel intimidated, telling themselves, "I'm not a tech person. This must be too hard." But in reality, data is not a wall built to separate you from the truth. It is a mirror reflecting what is truly happening around you. And that mirror can only be clear if you learn how to look into it with patience and observation. Think of every piece of data you collect as a small puzzle piece in the bigger picture of your life or work. A single piece might say very little on its own, but when you patiently fit them together, the full picture begins to emerge. That picture can reveal the safest path forward or warn you of risky turns ahead. This is why data analysis is not just a technical skill, but also an art of observing and connecting information. Those who are skilled in data analysis do not rush to conclusions based on a single figure or a short report. They understand that data must be placed in context, because an increase in numbers could be a positive sign, but it might also be an early warning of a hidden issue. For example, if monthly sales spike, it's natural to feel pleased. Yet a skilled analyst will ask, is this due to genuine market demand or simply because deep discounts have eroded our profits? Such questions help uncover what others may overlook. One crucial aspect of this skill is learning to listen to the data. It might sound odd, but data really does speak to you through patterns, trends, and anomalies. To hear it, you need to develop the habit of long-term observation, not just focusing on today's or this week's results. Often, the real value lies in detecting trends that span months or quarters, allowing you to forecast what may happen next. Data analysis is not always a solitary activity done in silence. It is also a skill of connecting and sharing information. When presenting data to others, what they care about is not the raw numbers, but the story behind them. A spreadsheet with 20 rows and 10 columns can be overwhelming, but a clear chart or a concrete example can help them see the issue instantly. That's why presenting data in a clear, easy-to-understand way is just as important as the analysis itself. Interestingly, when you know how to use data to make decisions, you naturally become more confident. Each decision you make is no longer a gamble based on luck, but is backed by clear evidence. This confidence not only gives you peace of mind, but also earns the trust and respect of others. In the workplace, colleagues and superiors are more likely to entrust you with major projects or important responsibilities because they know you will not act impulsively. However, to reach that point, you must learn to befriend the data, starting from small, simple things. You don't need to begin with advanced analytics tools. Even tracking and noting down small daily metrics, like customer counts, task completion times, or costs for specific activities, is a good starting point. Over time, as you get used to collecting and observing, you will naturally begin to notice patterns and relationships. A helpful habit is to always ask why. Why has the customer return rate dropped? Why have operating costs risen even though sales are unchanged? Why did one marketing campaign perform better than the others? Each question leads to an answer, and each answer becomes a brick in the foundation for your next decisions. On this journey, you'll also discover that data doesn't always tell the truth in an absolute sense. A figure may be statistically correct, but if the source is incomplete or the measurement flawed, the result won't reflect reality. That's why the skill of verifying and validating data is critical. Before relying on any number to make a decision, ask yourself, is this source trustworthy? Was anything overlooked? Was the measurement accurate? The empathy in data analysis comes from seeing numbers not as cold, lifeless figures, but as reflections of people, their behaviors, feelings, and needs. For example, when analyzing customer behavior data, you don't just see churn rate increased by 15 cents. You think about why they left, how they felt when using your product, and what you can do to improve their experience. This approach allows you to make decisions that are not only correct, but also human-centered. And perhaps most importantly, see data analysis as a long-term journey, not a final destination. Each time you work with data, you learn something new, maybe a new tool, a fresh perspective, or a lesson from a mistake. The more you practice, the more data will feel like a trusted companion, guiding you and helping you make wise choices in any situation. From data to action, turning numbers into a guiding force. Data by itself does not create change. No matter how detailed a statistical table is, how many hundreds of pages a report contains, or how many thousands of metrics a dashboard displays, all of it is meaningless if it remains idle on a screen or stored away in a computer. The true value of data emerges only when it is transformed into concrete actions, sound decisions, and strategies that align with reality. Many people make the mistake of thinking that data analysis is simply about reading numbers and drawing conclusions. In truth, understanding the data is only the first step. The more important part is what you do with it. You might know that your website traffic increased by 40% last month, but if you don't use that information to adjust your marketing campaigns, improve the user experience, or optimize your product, then that number is just a passing fact with no real impact. The process of turning data into action often involves 3 steps: identifying meaning, planning, and execution. Identifying meaning. This is when you answer the question, what is this data telling me? You need to connect the numbers to a story or a specific cause. For example, if the data shows that your customer drop-off rate is highest in the second week after purchase, you must dig deeper into the cause. Perhaps a missing feature, poor customer support, or insufficient onboarding guidance. Planning. Once the problem is understood, the next step is to define an action. Here, you answer, what will we do to change this trend? This is when data becomes the foundation for concrete strategies. Execution. Even the most flawless strategy is worthless if it is not implemented. Execution must be paired with tracking metrics to know whether the change delivers the intended results. The key is that every action you take based on data must be measurable. If you change something purely on a hunch, you won't know whether the improvement is due to your new approach or other factors. On the other hand, if you set clear goals and monitor the data consistently, you'll have solid evidence to assess effectiveness and make timely adjustments. A clear example is found in e-commerce companies. When faced with a high cart abandonment rate, they don't just look at the numbers and sigh. They analyze behavioral data and discover that most customers leave during the checkout step because shipping fees only appear at the final stage. From this insight, they change the interface to display shipping costs up front, giving customers full transparency and significantly reducing cart abandonment rates. This is proof that data only becomes valuable when it is acted upon. However, turning data into action also requires another critical element: prioritization. You might collect hundreds of data points and discover dozens of problems, but resources, time, people, budget are always limited. This means you must filter and focus on the actions with the greatest impact. A skilled manager never lets their team scatter in too many directions just because the data shows many issues. They concentrate on a few key priorities, resolving them thoroughly to create lasting results. This skill also demands flexible thinking. Data and market realities are constantly changing. A decision that is right today may not be right tomorrow. Therefore, when acting on data, you must be ready to adapt if new information emerges. Flexibility doesn't mean a lack of commitment. It means knowing when to stick to a plan and when to adjust to fit new circumstances. Another subtle but crucial aspect of turning data into action is the ability to persuade others. Not everyone can read and interpret data the way you do. Sometimes you must present your findings clearly, convincingly, and simply, so colleagues, superiors, or partners will agree with your proposed action. This requires not only strong analytical skills, but also the ability to tell a compelling story with data, transforming dry numbers into a vivid narrative tied to shared goals and benefits. It's also important to remember that every data-driven decision carries risk. No dataset is perfect, and no analytical model predicts with 100% accuracy. That's why a vital part of acting on data is accepting a reasonable level of risk. You must assess whether the risk is tolerable and what the consequences will be if things go wrong. Skilled data-driven decision-makers always prepare contingency plans to minimize negative impacts if the worst-case scenario happens. At the personal level, this skill applies far beyond business and management. In everyday life, knowing how to analyze and act on data helps you make smarter choices. For instance, by tracking your personal spending, you might realize that a small, recurring expense actually takes up a large portion of your monthly budget. If you use that insight to change your purchasing habits, you've turned data into a practical, beneficial action. The most important mindset is to remain proactive and accountable for what the data reveals. Don't use it as an excuse to justify failures or blame circumstances. See it as a tool to take control, find solutions, and drive positive change. When you truly master the process from analysis to action, you won't just read the story the data tells. You'll be able to write the next chapter of that story the way you want it to unfold. Staying objective and avoiding data traps. When numbers can mislead you, data is often considered absolute truth because it appears objective, clear, and precise. However, in reality, data can also mislead you if you are not careful and objective during the process of collecting, analyzing, and interpreting it. A number can be mathematically correct, yet lead you to the wrong conclusion if it's placed in an incomplete context or presented in a biased way. This is where the skill of staying objective and avoiding data traps becomes critical. First, it's important to understand that data is never entirely pure. From the very moment it is collected, it's already influenced by multiple factors: survey design, measurement methods, collection tools, and even the sample group chosen. For example, if you want to survey customer satisfaction, but only ask customers who recently received discounts or purchased during a sale, the results will skew more positively than reality. This creates a type of data trap known as sampling bias. Another common trap is confirmation bias, when the analyst only seeks and focuses on data that supports their initial hypothesis or belief, while ignoring or downplaying contradictory evidence. For example, if you believe a new advertising campaign is successful, you may focus only on the increase in orders while ignoring the fact that ad costs have doubled, reducing actual profit. To avoid these traps, the most important thing is to maintain critical thinking. Each time you look at a number, ask yourself, where does this data come from? Is anything missing or overlooked? Would the results change if a different collection method were used? Is there any data contradicting my initial conclusion? This skill requires you to accept that your analysis results may not align with your expectations or initial assumptions. Sometimes, the truth in the data forces you to change plans, abandon a cherished idea, or admit a mistake. This can challenge your ego, but it's necessary to ensure your decisions are grounded in reality rather than illusion. Another factor to consider is the context of the data. Numbers never exist in isolation. Their meaning depends on circumstances and timing. For example, a 20% sales increase compared to last month might look promising. But if last month's sales were unusually low due to a pandemic or an isolated event, that growth may not signal true improvement. Conversely, a slight drop in monthly sales might still be a positive sign if it's significantly higher than the same month last year. When working with data, you must also beware of the correlation-causation trap. Just because two variables move together does not mean one causes the other. For instance, data may show that when employee turnover rises, revenue also declines. But this doesn't necessarily mean turnover directly causes revenue loss. Both could be affected by a third factor, such as a market downturn or a strategic shift. To remain objective, you should establish a clear analysis process. This process should include 1. Defining clear research questions. What exactly are you looking to find in the data? 2. Collecting multidimensional data. Avoid relying on a single source or type of data. 3. Verifying and cross-checking. Compare data from different sources to identify inconsistencies. 4. Interpreting based on evidence. Every conclusion must be supported by clear data. A good habit is to always seek counter-evidence to your conclusions. If you can't find any contradictory data, you might be confined within an information comfort zone. This practice helps you avoid complacency and see the problem from more perspectives. Human factors can also create bias. Data collectors may unintentionally or deliberately record information in a way that favors a certain goal. Analysts might be pressured by management to present better results than reality. Thus, objectivity is not just a technical issue, but also a matter of professional ethics. A skilled analyst excels not only in tools and methods, but also in upholding the principle, truth matters more than short-term gain. A useful technique for avoiding data traps is to clearly present assumptions and limitations of your analysis. This helps your audience understand under which conditions the results hold true and what factors haven't been accounted for. For example, this forecast assumes market demand will remain steady for the next 6 months. If there are significant changes, the outcome may differ. This approach not only protects your credibility, but also helps others make better informed decisions. Finally, remember that maintaining objectivity in data analysis doesn't mean completely removing intuition or personal experience. In fact, these can complement data by helping you understand the context and make more flexible decisions. The key is to clearly distinguish between what comes from data and what comes from intuition, ensuring the latter does not entirely dictate your conclusions. When you develop the habit of looking at data with a clear, critical eye, questioning it, verifying it, and respecting its context, you will avoid the most common data traps. More importantly, you will become a wise decision maker, capable of leading based on truth rather than being swayed by flashy but meaningless numbers. Skills and tools for effective data analysis. The foundation of smart decision making. When it comes to data analysis, many people assume it's a job that requires highly specialized knowledge, that you must be tech savvy or know programming to do it well. In reality, while technical expertise can help you analyze at a deeper level, the most important elements are thinking skills and how you approach the data. Tools are only the means. Your ability to understand problems and make decisions is what ultimately determines the outcome. First, a good data analyst must have logical and systematic thinking. Logic helps you identify cause and effect relationships and find connections between numbers. Systematic thinking allows you to see not just isolated parts, but the bigger picture. When you can place data within a chain of causes and effects, you better understand how changes in one factor can impact the entire system. Next is critical thinking. No matter how well data is collected, it can still contain errors or biases. Critical thinking ensures you don't blindly trust results, always asking, why? Is this source reliable? Could there be another explanation? This healthy skepticism helps you avoid false conclusions and make more accurate decisions. Data storytelling is also a crucial skill. A solid analysis, if presented in a dry and complex way, will be difficult to convince others. You must know how to turn complex tables into charts, graphs, or narratives that are easy to understand, allowing your audience to quickly grasp the key points and see the value of the information. In terms of tools, there are many options to suit different needs and skill levels. 1. Excel and Google Sheets, the most common tools, suitable for both beginners and experienced users. They allow you to process data, perform calculations, create pivot tables, and generate charts. Easy to learn, flexible, and widely accessible. 2. Power BI and Tableau, powerful data visualization tools for creating interactive dashboards, connecting to multiple data sources, and conducting real-time analysis. Ideal for businesses requiring complex analysis and professional presentations. 3. Google Data Studio, Looker Studio, free, user-friendly, and well-integrated with other Google products like Google Analytics and Google Ads. Very useful for marketing and online business analysis. 4. Python and R, for advanced users handling large datasets, applying statistical models, or machine learning. Both have strong communities and many libraries for analysis and visualization. 5. SQL, the language for querying databases. Knowing SQL allows you to retrieve data directly from its source, ensuring accuracy and integrity. However, tool selection should depend on your goals and work context. You don't have to learn everything at once. In a small business environment, Excel or Google Sheets might be enough. In a managerial role or when reporting to multiple stakeholders, Power BI or Tableau might be better. In research or advanced analytics, Python, R, and SQL will help you go further. Alongside tools, data management skills are essential. You must know how to organize data systematically, name files, tables, and columns consistently, and store them in a way that's easy to retrieve. Well-managed data makes analysis faster and reduces the risk of mistakes. Also, basic statistical knowledge is a must. You don't need to become a professional statistician, but you should understand concepts like mean, median, variance, standard deviation, and how to read charts. These basics help you understand the nature of data and spot anomalies. Teamwork skills also play a vital role. Data analysis is not always a solo activity. Often, you'll work with colleagues from different departments to collect data, share insights, or implement actions. Communicating effectively with non-data professionals ensures your findings are clearly conveyed and easily applied. Finally, a skilled analyst always keeps up with new tools and trends. The data analytics landscape changes rapidly. A popular tool today may be replaced tomorrow by a more advanced solution. Staying curious and experimenting keeps you ahead of the curve and gives you a competitive advantage. When you combine these skills with the right tools, you won't just analyze data accurately. You'll transform it into a powerful source for smart decision-making, guiding your personal or organizational direction with clarity and confidence. When data becomes the compass for success. Looking back at everything we've explored, it's clear that the ability to analyze data and make data-driven decisions is no longer just a bonus advantage. It's an essential requirement if you want to go far and stay strong in any field. The modern world runs on information, and those who master information are the ones who hold control. From understanding the value of data as the foundation for all decisions, following a clear process to refine raw information into truly important insights, turning data into concrete, measurable actions, staying objective and avoiding data traps, to selecting and mastering the right tools. All these are critical links in helping you make accurate, persuasive decisions. Those who possess this skill don't just read data, they know how to place data into context to understand the story it tells. They aren't swayed by flashy but meaningless numbers, nor are they trapped by subjective emotions. Instead, they let data act as a map, pointing them toward the shortest, safest route to their goals. Most importantly, once you truly master this skill, you'll significantly reduce risk and increase your ability to anticipate the future. Every decision you make will no longer be based on luck, but on clear, evidence-backed analysis. In business, this means optimizing resources, avoiding waste, and seizing rare opportunities in time. In personal life, it means making wiser choices, from managing finances and shaping your career path to other major life decisions. Of course, becoming a skilled data analyst doesn't happen overnight. It requires consistent practice, sharp observation, and a constant willingness to learn. Technology will evolve, tools will change, and markets will shift, and you must remain adaptable. But once you've built the mindset for analysis and the ability to connect data with action, you will be able to stand firm in the face of any change. Remember, data only has value when it is transformed into knowledge and action. A report, no matter how well designed, or a spreadsheet, no matter how detailed, is meaningless if it doesn't lead to a decision or a concrete improvement. Conversely, an action backed by solid data carries far more weight and credibility than one based purely on intuition. Now is the time to ask yourself, where am I on the journey to mastering data? Do you truly know how to look at numbers and uncover the story within? Can you confidently say that every decision you make has a strong foundation in data? If the answer is still uncertain, that's your signal to start today. If what you've read has helped you realize the immense value of this skill and inspired you to develop it for yourself, treat this as your starting point. Keep learning, practicing, and applying it. Day by day, you'll find yourself becoming sharper, more decisive, and more trusted in the eyes of others. And to make sure you never miss the latest knowledge, methods, and strategies to master data and master decision-making, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. With one small action, you'll always be connected to valuable content that keeps you not only up to date, but one step ahead in this data-driven era. Because in the end, success doesn't come from knowing more than others. It comes from acting right at the right time. And data is exactly what gives you that edge.